of speed that we require. As you know, that when people travel, they want speed, they want convenience. And we're buying these locomotives as part of a major strategy for the turnaround of our long-distance train service, what is popularly known as Shosholoza Mail. Performance of the long distance has been the issue of old locomotives which do not meet the requirements of our times. And we went on a process, on a very competitive process, that, as I said, is contained in our annual report that was tabled to the Minister of Transport and to Parliament on the process we followed. Competitive, open, transparent. We even wrote the name of the companies that put the bids and their scores, just to give assurance. At that time, of course, it was obvious to us that there were a lot of vested interest in this particular program. I had a lot of debate on this issue, by the way. If you look at the Cape Town Press Club, I debated with the former spokesperson of the DA in Parliament, or rather at the press club, on these locomotives. What do they mean? And I want to assure the country, I want to assure government, I want to assure the people of South Africa that Prasa has bought one of the best locomotives you'll ever find, not only in the country, in the world. Let me repeat that. Prasa has acquired one of the best locomotives in the world for its passenger services side. And we are not here to even apologize about that decision. As you know, we're buying 20, out of these 70 locomotives, we'll get 20 of those 70 will be what we call diesel locomotives, and the 50 that we'll get later on will be 50 hybrid, which will enable us to move both on tracks, whether with electricity or not. There are two important things that I want to emphasize before I ask the CEO of our rail division to read the detailed statement. Firstly, of course, it's quite clear that the journalist concerned is quite good at writing issues about my houses, isn't it? That is doing well there. But I think he has taken this too far and not checked the facts. The final arbiter, this is a very important point I want to emphasize. The final arbiter on issues of safety in the railway environment is the railway safety regulator, which is established in terms of the law in the country. And I want to inform and report that after we've received the first locomotives, and now we've received 13, and we'll be receiving an additional 7 in a month's time, the rail safety regulator was quite satisfied, and it has given us what we call a testing and a commissioning permit. And the rail safety regulator will then, after the results of our testing, give us what we call a permanent permit to operate this. The rail safety regulator, with its engineers, will not issue even a testing and a commissioning permit to a locomotive that doesn't meet the standards. That's a very important point. But let me say to you, as the ladies and gentlemen of the media, the rail safety regulator issued a statement, by the way, on Friday, in response to the question from the journalist who wrote the article, I think it's Mr. Maipek, confirming that they've issued a testing and a commissioning license for this locomotive. Meaning, in terms of the safety standards of the country, which they, as I emphasize, the rail safety regulator is the authority to deal with, they were satisfied that this locomotive meet all the requirements. We'll deal with those in just in a short while, to both in terms of what those safety standards are and what is the process for determining all of those issues. But the fundamental point and the big question is, why was rapport not interested in publishing in this very article the fundamental issue that the authority that by in law is authorized to approve safety and new technology that we introduce in our rail environment. Because even if there were concerns from Transnet, and I want to deal with that issue now, but once the rail safety regulator has made a decision, there is no any other authority that can determine that. So I think that the big question that should be asked is why he chose not to publish the very statement issued by the rail safety regulator. I'm not going to answer that question. Why such an important authority that has got the knowledge, that embodies the knowledge, that embodies the safety standards, technical specification, that has pronounced itself? The journalist and the editor of report felt very strongly that it can be disregarded in that way. So the first issue that I want to say is that we meet the safety standards and we provide that and all of that. Secondly, I want to also indicate that this issue is not new. When the first locomotives were delivered in Cape Town, at the Cape Town Harbour, a journalist, I think from the Sunday Times, his name is Ash. What was his name? Ash. Paul Ash. Paul Ash asked me this question. In January this year, and I'm surprised that January, now we're in July, 6 months down the line, someone makes a new discovery. Isn't it? It's a discovery, 6 months down the line. I then took Ash through all these issues. What is the procedure and the process that is there? And that is why we never had it as a big issue. Now, 6 months down the line, we are told that the country's largest and most expensive tender blunder has happened. Transnet. Prasa and Transnet work very closely, as many of you are aware, that the country's network is shared between Prasa and Transnet. Transnet owns mainly the mainline lines. Prasa owns the commuter lines. But historically, we know that this is the same rail tracks that belong to the South African railways and later to the South African railways and harbors. Now, part of it belongs to us. And naturally, when there are issues of safety, when there's an introduction of new technology by Transnet or by Prasa, the two parties are required by law to cooperate. That is why one of the conditions of the license that is issued to Transnet and to Prasa by the Railway Safety Regulator, it requires us to sign what we call an interface agreement. The interface agreement makes provision so that we don't run different technologies, we do not create accidents in that environment. Prasa and Transnet have got operating license from have got permits from the Rail Safety Regulator, and those permits are clearly outlining the processes that we must follow. So if there is an engineer from Transnet who writes a letter to our own engineers and say we are concerned about part of your new locomotives or part of your new technology. And by the way, let me emphasize, this doesn't only happen in locomotives, in our signaling system. Because you remember that this signal is not going to be for commuter trains. Transnet freight trains will have to pass through those lines. We need to make sure that there's proper alignment. That is what we call the interface agreement, so we must prepare for all those processes. So it's not a new thing. As we prepare for the new trains, the design of the trains, we also take the rail safety regulator to go with us. We also interact with Transnet, because when those trains interface and they move, you find one trip, half of the trip is undertaken on the Prasa line, half of the trip is undertaken on the Transnet line. So interface is very important. It's not even confined, even private companies. Rovos Rail, when it operates on the Prasa line, it operates on the Transnet line, it must sign what you call an interface agreement as operators to make sure that we do not bring different technologies and we prevent rail occurrences or incidents, as we call them. So that is a process that is there. And I want to assure you that between Prasa and Transnet engineers, there has been a lot of debate. And I think that I'm told that the journalist says, I've got the letter. I think he got probably a copy of the letter leaked to him by someone, whether in Prasa or on Transnet, and he only took that letter as the alpha and the omega on this story. Because there are letters from Prasa to Transnet. Okay? Transnet engineers who write, not to me, who write to the Prasa engineers. And Prasa engineers, vice versa, would write to Transnet, debating the technical specifications on the line. Because there are safety standards which I think my colleagues will go through. We have fully satisfied all of those. I'm disappointed. I've read statements from political parties in Parliament. They are misplaced and ill-informed. And I think at the right time when we go to Parliament, we'll be able to put this matter to rest. The statements issued about corruption, you just have to read page 26 and page 27 of our report. The procurement process we followed can stand to scrutiny. But we knew when we made this decision to buy these locomotives. If you follow the Cape Press Club, it was quite clear that people were trying to force us to buy certain kinds of locomotives. We didn't want to buy those locomotives because they were not suitable for a business that we're trying to build. We want an intercity service that is fast, that is competitive, and we couldn't be forced. I heard even some of the unions saying we can build these locomotives in Kuduspoort. The locomotives we bought cannot be built by any company here. Even in Kuduspoort, ask Transnet, our sister company, and we work very well with the leadership of Transnet. Siyabonga Gama will tell you that we had agreed with Prasa to go through the testing processes on these locomotives. It's the right thing to do. We are at the testing phase of this, and let me give you a report. You know, I was told that our locomotives cannot even pass through a bridge. In our testing, we've gone through many, not bridges, but tunnels. We've passed through tunnels. In all of them, we've taken this train during the Jazz Festival. People who travel to the Jazz Festival in Cape Town, the Cape Town International Jazz Festival, traveled on our train that was pulled by a new locomotive. It was one of those. Go and calculate how many tunnels and bridges we've passed. There's no bridge that was hit by this train. We've taken this train to Mahikeng, Johannesburg, Mahikeng. We've taken this train to Bloemfontein. We've taken this train to the Eastern Cape. Next week, we had planned to take this train. It was an EXCO decision that we must also take this train to Limpopo so that we can see. Because why we bought these locomotives is not only to revitalize Shosholoza Mail, but to introduce what we call regional services. I think at Africa Rail, Nikki, you ask a lot of questions about that. So these locomotives have got a clear purpose. So from our side, there's no story. The hype that is being created is quite clear. It's aimed at other purposes, which I think probably it will become very obvious in due course. I've spoken to the CEO of the Rail Safety Regulator. He's disappointed that the least that could be done is that this journalist, after he'd written his story, will say, I've spoken to the authority that should make a determination on this matter, which is the Rail Safety Regulator. They've given, but he chose to put it at the back and not report on this thing. And it's a material issue, and it has to do with the duty to inform. I think drums are being, what do you call it? People are beating up drums. You withhold information. You create an impression that Prasa is run by a bunch of incompetent people who don't even follow a process. That firstly, we are corrupt, and secondly, that we're incompetent. Now, why we take this matter seriously is not because of the views that the journalist may hold. He's got the right to his own views. We respect his constitutional duty to write. And I think that I'll be the first one to defend his right to write whatever he likes. That is a democracy. But what we do not accept is an impression being created that the biggest, that the country's largest and most expensive tender blunder. There's no blunder of this issue. Actually, we'll now outline the science. I've even asked my team that we even put on the screen for 3 minutes to run. You see this train going through the railway network and these tunnels. So we've run these things for the past few months. The final point on my side, people ask a question. Why aren't you running these locomotives if there's no problem? Okay? Again, it shows a lack of understanding. And if you don't understand something, ask. Don't write and create the kind of statement that are being created here. The reason why these locomotives are being tested is because we must run them for 3,000 kilometers and make sure it's an engineering practice. Not only in rail, when you do Midupi, for example, before you put in those turbines and everything into process, you must first run them and make sure that they can meet the requirements that are there. But our locomotive, and I want us to write, we are saying it boldly, is the best locomotive as we stand. There may be competitors who are doing work for other companies who may not be happy with this locomotive. But I want to tell you that if you were with us drivers, for example, not only from Prasa, even from our sister companies, allow these drivers to run these locomotives. And their feedback has been tough. So I'm saying we are meeting the standards. The testing and the commissioning of these locomotives confirm the fact that they not only meet, but they exceed. And this is an important point. They don't only meet, but they exceed the safety standards that we have in place. So we want to turn it around and say, why would the authority of the rail safety regulator not be taken serious? Why should a letter written by some engineer who's expressing views of his or a company be elevated above the authority that by law is charged with the right to determine safety in the country? I will go to Parliament when Parliament reopens. I think that will present everything. But these locomotives have been debated. You know, before they were even delivered, there's been a lot of smoke being created on these locomotives. And what's the reason? Because of huge vested interest in these locomotives. Because they're seen as a competitor. And we are satisfied. If you look at the reliability, Daniel will talk. You know Daniel? You see him? Daniel Timkul is our top engineer on rolling stock in the country. It's Dr. Timkulu. We invested in him. Many companies in the world wants to have his services, wants to employ him. And I'm very proud that we've been able to keep. He's been leading the team that entered into design process, not only with Transnet, the RSR, but with he's been spending half of his time in Spain in the design of these locomotives. One of the best rolling stock engineers. But maybe because he's black, isn't it? That his authority cannot be taken seriously. German companies, he studied in Germany too. German companies want this service to run on maintenance, engineering and everything. The University of Stellenbosch, a very renowned institution of higher learning, has been working with us on this program. They even wrote the report with our own engineers. On the technical side, not on economics or politics or social, no. On the engineering side. And someone who's interested in the truth would have told the whole country that yes, there are concerns from Transnet and all of those things, but the authority with the responsibility to issue this has issued that, has given a testing and a commissioning permit. And secondly, that the test, I would understand if this we hit one of those tunnels, or some of the overhead structures, this locomotive pulled them down. There was none. Daniel will again report on some of the results we have ran. Then last night, after coming back from Mamelodi meeting with taxi operators, and it was for the first time that I read this story. And I was amazed. I tried to search what is the issue. I still haven't found the issue. Because I'm convinced this story has nothing to do with a locomotive that has got that exceeds the height restriction. This story has nothing to do with that. I've been asking my husband, I said, last night, I slept and I dreamt about it. What is it? What is the story? Because we'll show it scientifically here. And ultimately the test is what? Isn't there what? What is the saying? The issue about the pudding?
The taste.
The test is in the pudding, or vice versa.
The taste of the pudding is
Yeah? The what?
The proof?
The proof. And ultimately, if someone says this locomotive is higher than a bridge, there's a very simple way, isn't it? Take the locomotive through the bridge. And it's either going to not go through, or the height will prevent it from going through the tunnel. But if it goes through, it comes out at the other end. What is the issue? So I was disappointed. But I want the country to know that Prasa is hard at work to modernize our transport system. Prasa is at work to bring in new technologies. We have said that at the end of the year, we'll not introduce only commuter trains, but we'll be increasing the number of new locomotives that we have. So as people write this type of articles that I saw yesterday in Rapport, we have decided as a team that we're not going to debate with that. We're going to continue the work. So that South Africans at the end of the year, they can see that there's a new train that has been bought. South Africans can see a new signaling system. The people of Mamelodi can see the new station and the doubling of the track that we have done for them. That the people of Gauteng can see a new signaling center in Kalfontein that we're building. That the commuters can experience a different travel experience when they go to 135 stations that we own. That's the work that we'll continue to do. I wish I've responded many times to articles written by the Rapport, and they never even bothered to publish any of my response. And I've said I'm not going to ask for a right of reply, because I thought from a fairness point of view, there's a duty to enable the other side to present their views. It's very unfortunate, and I hope that also political parties will familiarize themselves with the facts before trying to score cheap political points that do not have any basis at all. Some of the statements I read this morning, they really disappointed me. So I'm going to ask the CEO of our rail division to quickly go take you through some of those, and then Daniel will tell us about the engineering process we followed to give us the results that we're talking about, and that will put to rest. I hope it put this matter to rest. If there's other issues that we need to fight about, that's fine, but this is not one of them. Unfortunately, the CEO of Transnet is not here. He's traveling abroad, but I had a discussion with him, and he told me that the so-called Transnet engineer must be identified because clearly this person doesn't speak on behalf of Transnet. I've spoken to the CEO of the rail safety regulator. Just even though we knew that we had that authority and permit, to ask him, CEO, does the rail safety regulator have concerns with these locomotives? If you have changed your views, they said, no. You guys are doing well, you are testing this thing, and that will move from the testing and commissioning permit into a permanent thing when all the results are in. And the results now are 100%. They're showing that we've got a locomotive that meets all our standards. I'm going to ask Musengwa, the CEO of our rail safety, and then afterwards Daniel, and then we can open it for questions.
Thank you, Group CEO. I think mine is just to give a factual account on the level of compliance by these new locomotives that we've procured in order to rebut the report that came out yesterday. I just want to highlight some of the points that were raised by the report. The article stated that our Afro locos, which we have received 13 so far, have a roof height of 4.264 meters. Firstly, that is wrong. The spec itself that was quoted in the paper is wrong because our loco is 4.1 meters in terms of its height. That Prasa was warned about the locomotives, that they were too high even before they started arriving in the country. That Prasa carried on with the contract despite the warnings from faceless senior Transnet engineers, that the locomotives could damage the overhead electrical cables on the country's rail lines. This article is grossly inaccurate, it is false, and we reject it. The article claims that the new Afro 4000 locomotives exceed the height restrictions for diesel locomotives on long-distance lines, based on the information provided by anonymous railway engineers. This claim is completely devoid of facts, as the new locomotives comply with the applicable Transnet Freight Rail electrical safety instructions signed by both Prasa and Transnet in 2012. I can attest to this because I was the signatory to those standards. Myself and Mr. Siabonga have signed those standards, and we've got proof of that. As well as the Transnet, as well as the rolling stock electrical safety instructions of 2000. The 2012 electrical safety instruction specification supersedes all previous specifications. The instruction specifies that the normal height between rail and electrical wire for the 3 kV and 25 kV network is 5.0 meters, and the minimum is 4.5. The safety instruction allows for a tolerance of plus 150 millimeters between the roof of the locomotive and the electrical contact wire. That is your traction wire. The Afro 4000 locomotive's height is 4.1 meters as opposed to the 4.262 as reported by the report. As a first conclusion, when the height of the Afro 4000 is taken at 4.1 meter and the contact wire is at the minimum height of 4.5, the clearance between the roof of the locomotive and the contact wire is 400 millimeters. Based on the aforementioned, it is clear that the gap of 400 millimeter for the Afro 4000 is well above the minimum specifications. The Afro 4000 therefore conforms to the adopted safety standard in the South African rail environment. The wire distance should be maintained at 5.0 meter. However, if it is below 4.5, immediate corrective action is required to maintain the wire above the minimum 4.5 meter. Prasa further commissioned the University of Stellenbosch, which confirmed that the Afro 4000 will be able to pass safely under the minimum contact wire height of 4.5. The investigation report, which included a scientific calculation of the gap looking at all possible scenarios, as well as the lab testing, was led by Dr. Petersen, who is an electrical engineer, and accepted by Prasa Engineering Department under the leadership of Dr. Daniel Mtimkulu. The Railway Safety Regulator has also issued a no objection letter to allow for the testing and commissioning of the Afro 4000 locomotives. The regulator has also been part of the design review process throughout this process and would not have allowed the testing and commissioning if there was a design flaw that would compromise safety. The locomotives are currently being tested with success in both the Prasa and the Transnet network to fulfill the 3,000 fall-free kilometers that the Group CO spoke about. The new locomotives have been running in the Eastern Cape, Bloemfontein, Mafikeng, Kimberley, and between Cape Town and Johannesburg. No technical flaws or safety issues have arisen resulting from these tests. Further long-distance and regional services routes will be tested. And I think the Group CO did mention about the Pretoria to Polokwane test that will take place next week. The introduction of the Afro 4000 represents a major positive step in changing the travel experience of South Africans. These represent a critical element in turning around the long-distance and regional passenger rail services in South Africa. The new modern locomotives bought by Prasa are the best in South Africa today, and they do not only meet but far exceeds the applicable technical and safety specifications. It is rather unfortunate that the misleading media report has missed critical facts around this important investment. South Africans and the region will soon realize the full benefit of this investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel, will you take us through the engineering process that you followed?
Thanks, CEO. Thanks to the very CEO. I think mine is just to give you the context. This locomotive, it actually took Prasa's frustrations into science. That's what we have done because of the level of the problems that we have had. So we took all our problems, we turned them into science. Hence, today we can proudly talk about the Afro 4000. We followed a strictly, the design review process, which is called, and we're calling it the design and development process, which is very strict. It actually forces us not to neglect, the other stakeholders. Inherently, it has got 4 critical elements. We need, because of the passenger, type of environment we are in. We always talk about what we call RAMs. Now, when we talk about RAMs in engineering, we talk about reliability, maintainability, availability, and safety. Those are the 3 things that propels any design or whoever that claims to be in the design space. You must be understanding that language. Therefore, it means that you can never neglect, your other, stakeholders, as well as your environment, because there's 3 main things. Okay, it is about the condition of your environment, it is about your operations, it is about your maintenance. Those are the 3 fundamental features that are at the heart of our design process. Hence, we had to engage with Transnet Rail Engineering as part of the preliminary design. We also had to engage with the rail safety regulator as part of the design process. Okay? Therefore, you cannot take, because here in South Africa we are running on the narrow gauge. In Europe, they've got a wider gauge. Now, there's no way that you can take a wider gauge. You want to bring it here. It's just not going to work. You've got to go through the design process. There is no other way to do it. And we furthermore had to engage with the University of Stellenbosch as part of the rail chair when we were going through the preliminary design. Because what was important, it was for us to say, we've got two critical standards, which is the electrical safety instruction, as well as the electrical safety specification. Now there is a standard which is very clear that the CEO was actually talking about, to say that there is a minimum height, there is also the maximum height. Therefore, we had to take the Afro to go through that process. We went through a very detailed process. Now, let me highlight why we had to take it through that process. Because the conditions in South Africa are totally, different. Okay? We are dealing here with the extreme heat. In Europe, they're dealing with the extreme cold. Okay? Now, you can understand that these are two separate environments. Therefore, we had to go through a process of validation, okay, which is very important. Now, when we did the simulation with this locomotive, what was key was that it had to pass what we call humid test, vapor test, water test, heat test. Okay. Now, these are the things that are inherent into any engineering process. Therefore, there is no other way that we could have actually bypassed this process. This process that I'm sharing with you, it's also what the rail safety regulator is actually judging us on. It's what they have, and it's what we said we would do. So from an engineering point of view, we are comfortable that these two standards, this locomotive, it passed that test of time. Therefore, the simplicity around it is that safety, reliability, availability, maintainability, it's a DNA in engineering. Hence, we went through this process. Thank you, Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Mtimkul. I think that after the statement by the CEO of our rail division, as well as by our own engineer, the big question arises. Why would a newspaper ignore such fundamental facts? I think we want to ask that question. Why would they ignore the truth and take this country on a journey? And the only explanation I have is that, and when I look at all the detailed questions that the journalist asked, he asked other questions that have nothing to do with the height. He was asking how many politically connected individuals are in these things. And this is a question he has been asking, by the way, consistently. So the interest, he says there's a gravy train, these locomotives, these new trains, all these big contracts you see in Prasa are for politically connected people on the gravy train. We're not going to deal with that. Today we want to deal with the science of the matter. If this locomotive is bigger than the tunnel, let us go. So are we ready to show the...
Yeah.
Are we ready to show that quickly, and then we'll ask for the questions so that we can open for questions? So that the journalists can see this thing in action. Or can we start to take questions as they are busy preparing the locomotive, rather the... Yeah. But you said why did you say let's take questions in a minute.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think let's take questions, like the Group CEO says. My colleagues are just trying to lower the thing at the back so that you can see the video. I also wanted to say that I know, Tiri, you wanted the statement. I asked my colleagues to give it to you. Some of you, I think they will, if you need it, they'll give it to you now. If you need it later, they can give it to you later. You want it now? Wendy? Okay, but those who have got questions while they're distributing the statement, we can proceed. Madam Yellow, one, I'll take a set, I think. Okay, madam. Okay, I'll get into Madam.
Hi, sir. My name is Martin Yeruboy from ENCA. One of the things that perhaps could make people have questions is, there's one question that has not been answered. Do you have an exact date of when these trains, or these locomotives as you guys call them, when will they be used? Do you have a specific date on when these will be used so that we can perhaps dispel any myths, whether there's problems with this or not?
Okay, madam.
Now let's deal with this question before, because I don't think Malungelo heard us. I don't think you've heard us. These locomotives are being run. We've said there's a clear process. I've explained that. When we get delivery of these locomotives, we must run them for 3,000 for the fault-free thing to make sure that they meet, there's no problems with this. That's what we are doing. As the people who went to the church, I said, I gave that example, traveled on these locomotives. Okay? We are running these locomotives as part of that 3,000. What we are waiting for is that once most of them have reached that stage, we've completed the testing, the rail safety regulator will then will move from what we call a testing and a commissioning permit into a permanent permit. They're on the network. We'll show, when we show that video, it's part of locomotives that they're not parked somewhere.
So they're already on the system?
No, they're already on the system, but what we are not doing now, they're not deployed for commercial use, okay, until that 3,000, and also for Prasa to record them in our asset book now. That's what it is. That's an accounting process, that's an engineering process, okay? So it's very important. These locomotives are not parked somewhere no one can see them. You can go around the country. We're part of the trip to. I traveled on this locomotive with the Minister of Transport, with the Chairman of Prasa, with a number of journalists in the Cape. We left when we first received the first one, or rather the first four. We traveled from Cape Town. We went to Stellenbosch. What is it called, this one? Next, we stopped at Spear. There's a station there. We moved out. And that was not the Prasa line, by the way. That is a Transnet line. We tested it to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that is there. So I want to deal with this issue so that we understand. It went to Mahikeng. It went to the Free State. It went to the Eastern Cape. We are doing that, and part of what we show now is part of the test for us to complete before we then deploy them fully into commercial services. That is a proper requirement. I felt I should park that. I should close that issue so that we then focus on this thing that doesn't meet technical and safety specifically, because this is the accusation that has been made. And I don't want us, as we answer all your questions, I don't want us to go around this issue and talk about other things. We are told we've got a locomotive. We spent 3 billion rands on a locomotive that doesn't. And I don't want the journalists to ignore that and go and write about something else when the real question is at the very heart of our press conference. We've indicated the safety process, the engineering process, and we want people to say, but there's a fault there. That's where you are failing and all of those things.
I'll come back to you, Nikki.
Just to add on the running of the trains, as we speak currently, we're doing the Johannesburg, Mafikeng, Kimberley, back. We're also doing the PE Bloemfontein. Those are running as we speak. And I can tell you, these trains traverse on the 3 kV network, the 25 kV network, and the non-electrified network. So the trains are running. It's part of the testing and the commissioning process.
Okay, just behind you, yeah.
Hi, my name is Renee Villiers. I'm from Tracking for Shaft. And I wanted to just ask you, when you said that this isn't about the locomotives, but about an ulterior motive, I just wanted to clarify what that ulterior motive is. If you could just go into, do you see this as a race issue?
I don't know. No, I don't know. That is why I'm saying that throughout the night, I've said, how can such obvious facts, okay? Now, for me, ulterior motive will come when the rail safety regulator gives you a statement They've confirmed to me that they've given this journalist a statement on Friday. He asked them on Thursday. Friday morning, they answered the statement. He wrote this article, okay, and decided that the rail safety regulator part, which is very important for public information, okay, because who gives the assurance to the country is the rail safety regulator. He then took the rail safety regulator statement and put it under the table. He doesn't refer to it at all, okay? And that is why I'm asking, is he interested in the truth and the facts? Okay? Because if he published the fact that the rail safety regulator had given Prasa the permit, he will not have been able to write that story. Okay? But because I think is an interest in putting us in a very bad light, okay? Again, let me go back because there's a bit of history here. But I don't want to focus, I want to focus on the issue today, not on the journalist, because I think we are not here. I think that the journalists could do a good job. They write quite a lot about the work we do. We had Africa Rail last week. It was the media that conveyed to the whole country the progress we are making on these issues. In a very balanced way. I think that when I read quite a number of articles, they were telling the country what is it that we've succeeded in doing. They were also telling the country what are the challenges. They also told the country what we are lagging behind. So we're not asking journalists to hide the problems. We in fact think you are an important way of, you are a mirror we can mirror ourselves there, we can communicate with the country more effectively if we work with the journalists. But if we have someone who comes and say to us that the Prasa rolling stock is in jeopardy, we've got 123 billion rand, the country is interested how we're performing this thing. I invite the journalist, I spent 4 hours with him. And then in that process I realized that in fact, most of the information that he wants to write he doesn't have. I volunteer. He applies for the, what do you call it, PAIA, a Promotion of Access to Information Act. He says, I want documents about this Gibela deal, the 51 billion rand contract. I then said to him in that 4 hours, look, I'm not going to give it to you because these bits contain commercial information. We can't share it with you, but I'm going to make a big concession. I'm going to create a, what you call a war room, put all the documents. You can come any day, study each and every document so that you can have. I even took him through the bidding process, who won, how they won, who lost, and everything. I've been patient. That very weekend, the headline in the report was that the Prasa rolling stock is in jeopardy. How can it be in jeopardy when I've just told the journalist who wrote the story that we've actually completed building 3 of the trains in Japan, in Brazil, okay? I think he has got a case to answer. Well, not to me, probably to the editorial team and everything, that why did they decide? If it was a decision of the editor, I'll respect that. But it's a material issue. How is it possible that a letter confirmation by the rail, because that confirmation tells you that Prasa actually followed the law. The confirmation, and I think the journalists must ask themselves a question. This statement by the rail safety regulator is put under the table, because if he included that in his statement, then all of us wouldn't be sitting here, isn't it? That is the bottom line. So I don't want to question other motives. I know that he had written about 7 different articles. Some had to do with me personally, so that is why I don't want to go into the space. But the question is that he must go on the radio station or write on Sunday in report why the statement of the rail safety regulator, which he asked on Thursday late, they provided in the morning. So I know the stories that no, it arrived late, okay? But the rail safety regulator was asked late on Thursday. Friday it responds to that. But I'll tell you that if we had to factor in the rail safety regulator, we wouldn't have a statement that says the country's largest and most expensive tender blunder, because it would have shown that in fact the whole story is false. So I'm very specific. because I don't want to attribute motives to journalists and what they are interested in. I respect Peter as a journalist. I respect the report newspaper as it is. But I must also say they haven't been very fair to us. But again, let's move away from the journalists. Focus on, we want to be accountable to the people of South Africa. We are told that we bought a locomotive that doesn't meet the technical, the safety, and the operational conditions of South Africa. We are saying here that we have taken all the necessary and reasonable steps to make sure that we fulfill all the requirements that are there. And I still want someone to argue with me and say, you have failed. And that's why we are here today to say, you have failed. It doesn't meet these requirements, or you didn't apply yourself. Or that, Dr. Daniel Timkulu, you and your design team failed the country. And if you fail the country, I will accept it here. But you can see that this article was not about this truth and the facts. And I'm still convinced that it's not about, every time I look at it, it raises more questions to me. But I think I wouldn't comment on it further now. Yeah.
And Nikki?
I just wanted to ask the
Okay,
race
follow.
issue. Do you feel that it is a race issue? Because you did say that in terms of political connections, he asked you about political connections and the gravy train comment you made. Do you feel that there's a racism there? Or,
It came from Peter. In the question he asked me that is this, in fact he called it a scheme for a gravy train to benefit politically connected people. And politically connected people are black. Yes, it came from him. Before I come to Nikki.
There's just a follow-up question from the ENCA guy, and perhaps something you can help us. In terms of the testing of the AFRI 4000, there's of course a 3,000 kilometer engineering requirement that needs to, and then there's an application process and an approval process or not, and then it goes into revenue service. In terms of the number of AFRI 4000s that you've already taken delivery of, could you maybe give us a graphic or just a quick comment on if it's 17, how far those 17 are away, if there's a normalized licensing process with the RSR, when we could expect to see them in revenue service?
Let me just take you through the RSR process. You see, the RSR process starts with what you call the design review. So even before you design and finalize the nature of the design of the locomotive, you've got to take them through that process. And of course, because this is an adaptation of what is called the Euro 4000, our engineers were involved in the very detailed design process, which we've got what we call the submittal review, where we submit our designs to the railway safety regulator. And then they issue a notice of no objection based on the reviews that they would have undertaken. Now, remember, a notice of no objection, fundamentally what the railway safety regulator looks at is safety. If a locomotive or any other technology that you introduce into the rail environment does not meet the safety requirements, they will never grant you a notice of no objection. So I just want to deal with that. So on the design side, that has been dealt with. Now, the permit that we've got is the testing and commissioning permit. Once this is completed, the expectation is that we will then give the RSR the results, because we need to provide the RSR with the results. Now, it's an objective process. It's not about who can influence a decision. It's a simple, pure technical process where we simply submit the test results. They can validate those test results and then issue the final go-ahead for us to run the locomotives. So the tests are looking at a whole range of factors: propulsion, braking system, all of those factors are looked into with the test. And we've got the detailed test results, which, by the way, have shown very positive results. We have not picked up any technical flaw on the test. And our engineering team can provide those results if they are required.
Why don't we go quickly through that and then come to the questions?
Sorry, I'm sorry, my question wasn't answered. How long before it goes into revenue surplus?
I think around latest it should be around August, if all tests would be, if everything would go smooth, because as you would appreciate, there and there will be issues that we need to, we need to deal with. So probably around end of August, some would have actually gone through. Some we might have to do certain things again just to make sure. But the view is that with the 3,000, should we pick up, because this is a redesign, should we pick up a small snake, we restart. And I think that's where we should not actually lose it. Okay. Should we pick up, let's say, when we're trying to close I'm making an example with an extreme case, a door doesn't close properly. We will not accept it. We will reset the 3,000 to 0 because it is a design, it must pass the test of time.
And let me just make it clear, the electrical clearance issue has not arisen, which is the basis for this article. It has not arisen.
Before we tell you, I think I'll start with you, but before I come to you, we would like to show you the video that the Group CEO was talking about. And then when I continue, I'll start with you.
All right. This is, I'm sure most of you, this is the longest tunnel. This is not in Europe. This is here. Okay? So we will just show you, just check what is going to come out there.
How many kilometers?
40. This tunnel is about a 15 kilometer tunnel. That is Hex River Tunnel. We were coming from Cape Town. So we were going through the Hex River Tunnel. Just to give you the sense, we were pulling here about 20 coaches and 2 dead locomotives. Okay? We were pulling about 20 coaches and 2 dead locomotives. Okay? Now, and I want you to just to note the science behind this. So far in South Africa, okay, none of the current locomotives are able to go through the tunnel because you've got less oxygen, they suffocate. Okay, because they are actually the diesel. Now let's be specific. We are talking about none of the diesel locomotives in South Africa are able to go through the longest
as well. So we thank them as well, the police and the Metro Police, we thank them so we can see that we are safe.
The Hex River Tunnel, you can check anywhere that they would
and a lot of blood would have shed if these police were not here. So that's it. I'm very happy.
Now,
to be able
to go through there, you know the tunnel.
We distancing ourselves periodly. Our people doesn't carry guns. We are making sure of that. We might not be able to control them on other things and everything, but in terms of the weapon, we told them we don't want to find anybody, or if we hear that you are arrested, you are carrying a gun on our protest, we will expel you from the associations. We are protesting peacefully. I'm telling you now, if you have a weapon, it will be a stone that we pick up anywhere else. That will be your weapon. We don't condemn that. So we're distancing ourselves as the two associations, Malta and Mata. No.
and he's sitting next
We
to
wash
a man
our
from
hands.
Springs, and he's sitting next to a boy from Mamelodi. Surely,
Yesterday he mentioned that the new trains will be coming on December. But if you can ask his plan, that what about the tax? He doesn't have any plans. And the issue of this talking about guns, people are having guns, they are killing each other. It was rude. It was out of order because
if really the issue is not, because we are trying.
we are here, this is a struggle of revolution, and the power must be given to the people. They are always.
That this train will not go through a tunnel.
maphodisa le bona bana ba batho because le bona ba mo kotsing le bona ka re modimo a ka ba shelter le bona
That
ba
they will be
kgone
brought down when this locomotive passes.
Sijabule kakhulu amabhesi la afikile afana azohamba isitaka endleleni singafiki sifike late laba sijabule kakhulu.
What is the problem? Well, I mean, you guys know. You must tell us. That is all I'm here to answer that. After you follow this process, what is the problem?
Okay, Tim.
My question was more or less made today, as I'm happy to answer. But what I would like to know is the statement says there has not been any problem found in the testing period, none whatsoever. Is there none whatsoever that has not been found that is the list?
Well, I want again to go to the engineering side so that we can provide that information.
As I have outlined, the issue of the NAN comes to the issue of the safety, come to the issue of the height. But the other issues that we have found, as I've mentioned earlier, we reset, we go back to reset. Okay, let me give you a typical example. I'm sure most of you can relate. The undercarriage, what we call the bogie, okay? We were not getting what we call a yaw dynamic because the locomotive, for it to be light and actually versatile, it has to give you that that dynamic move, okay? So it's called the yaw factor. Because it is important for acceleration, is important for the speed. Okay. We then realize that some of the what we call the damping springs were not properly adjusted. So there are those issues. But what we do, we will definitely say we restart. So hence I'm saying that this is what we've been actually. What we've been actually going through.
But Daniel, this article that we read yesterday was not talking about the snag list. It was saying we bought a locomotive that cannot go through bridges, cannot operate on all that. I don't want us to lose the focus on this issue. I want to insist on this point. You see, because we're going to deal with snag list. When we build a house, I'm on my way to the Greenview station. It's a new station. We haven't even operated it. My team is waiting there. Okay, that station has been completed. But our guys are busy with what we call the snake list. Things that the contractor may not have done properly, but the station is there. The people in Mamelodi can see we spent over 500 million rands on both the station as well as doubling the track in Mamelodi. That work we've done. Okay? Everyone can see that kind of work. This article is not saying is there a problem with the door or is there a problem with the light there and everything. Okay? I thought all the journalists, when they looked there, they would have said, wow, what a beautiful locomotive. It is a beautiful locomotive. It performs better, it's light, its impact on the tracks. It actually would cut the cost of maintenance. Okay? And I think that I've asked Dr. Tim Kulu to do an interview with Engineering News to deal with the engineering side, okay, of this particular issue. But today is not a discussion about the snake list. Today is that we bought a locomotive that cannot even get into platforms, that doesn't fit our rail environment, and who's the source? It's anonymous railway engineers that are being quoted. It's anonymous Transnet engineers that are being quoted. And we want to say, it is false. And I think that that article is not there to inform. So, yes, I think that, and let me tell you, we should be proud as South Africans. How many people are you leading in your design team from our own guys? 20. We have recruited a lot of young guys, young engineers from our townships. And let me tell you, all of them are excited when we fly them to Spain to go to be part of this design. We are building these skills for the country. We've sent even our drivers to look at the driver cap of this locomotive as well as the new trains that are there. Now, we do this thing in South Africa. Okay? The world all over says to us, wow, you guys have embarked on a major railway modernization drive. We see the results, we see the hard work. We come to South Africa, we are not even criticized on the wrong things. Okay? We pour scorn onto that. We try to create, because if someone design and and buy a locomotive of this nature, doesn't mean, it means one thing and one thing only, that we are a bunch of incompetent guys. Because for you to produce a locomotive of this kind, you wouldn't have dealt with the design process properly. You wouldn't have the technical skills to do all of those things. Let's call it for what it is. Okay? Prasa is entrusted, the agenda is that Prasa is entrusted with billions of rands to invest, but is not competent to manage that. Okay? Now we're starting to get to the question. Because a locomotive that doesn't fit is not a race issue. It's not a political issue. It's probably a race issue, but I don't even want to go there now. But it's a competency issue. Okay? Maybe I should have allowed the 20 young engineers to stand behind us here. Young, happy to serve our country. And I see an offensive that is trying to make sure, one thing that makes me wake up, we have difficulties in our rail environment. Metro rail is an old system, difficult to operate. But something that makes me wake up early in the morning is the fact that we know that the transformation in passenger railways is done by us, is driven by us. We shape the agenda. Okay? We are the ones who decided that the country needs new trains. We're not told by someone outside the country. We're not told by some expert somewhere. We said we needed new, and we went on a program to buy these new trains. We said the country needed new signals. And I'm proud that we are leading a team of young people who are transforming our railways so that in the next 50 years, we have a commuter and long-distance service that will serve the economy and make our people proud. That is the hard work that we want to be busy with. So you can keep on putting them down, put on the negative statements, but I'm saying the criticisms, the negative statements, if they are on the mistakes, on the things that are real, I'm happy to accept them. But the report article yesterday and the sensationalism that is there, the false message that is sending that this is even the most expensive tender blunder, it's wrong.
Okay, Nikki? Anyone in the back? Okay, Nikki.
There's obviously an issue. I'll make it my second question. No, I'll make my first question, sorry. With something that is this patently wrong, given what you've told us, what action will Prasa take to meet with Media 24 to discuss these stories that have been dribbling through their newspapers over the past few weeks of the number of trains is wrong. They're being made in Brazil and not South Africa. That the new ones don't even fit our tunnels. You're concerned that there's an agenda. You're not saying that it's the journalist's agenda, but you're concerned there is an agenda. How do you go about addressing that?
Nikki, initially we issued a statement via Moffat. We said in that statement that we are going to go to the press ombudsman, we're also going to take some of this through a legal process. But I've since told my guys that we should not, because I then realized that the system, I don't think there would be any benefit for us. I don't want the press ombudsman who says the article was wrong, and then in page 5, on the last page of the newspaper, then he apologizes in a small paragraph. I've said to the team, let's speak to the people of South Africa and let them see their work. So, Rapport, News 24, can keep on writing their story. I'm not interested. I'm not going to meet the editor. I'm not going to meet Ferriel at what is it called? City Press. I'm not going to say, I'm not interested in meeting them. Our people know what work we do. We wake up in the early hours of the morning, solve the problems of the country. We have an opportunity to create a new system. So I'm not going to complain. So I told my guys, we are not going to let this guy keeps on writing. But no amount of screaming headlines are going to change the reality on the ground. No one can change the fact that we now have 13 locomotives that are built, that are being tested in the country, and that in a month's time we'll be getting another 7. No one can change the fact that another 50 hybrid locomotives, even where we don't have electrical lines, will be able. No one can change that. No one can change that in November, Prasa will be testing the first train to replace the current old trains of Metro Rail. No one can change the fact that we have refurbished over 3,000 of the existing coaches so that we can run more passenger services. So our work will speak for itself. So screaming headlines, articles that are there, highly personalized attacks, I'm not going to take. And I want to say, I know that I've been advised, go the press ombudsman route. I'm no longer interested in that. Maybe someone in Prasa would be interested, or maybe someone in government. But as Lucky Montana, I want to state that I'm not going to go the press ombudsman. I read now, you know, that it's so funny to read the articles in Rapport in Afrikaans. Because for me, I've used those articles to renew my Afrikaans. You know, I actually didn't know, because I read something on 3 of the articles, and it fascinated me. And I realized that, no, this man is talking about the Group C of Prasa. You know what it's called in Afrikaans? Train groot bus. I love that, you know? Train groot bus. So I'm enjoying myself. I'm reading. I'm not overly concerned. I think that if someone has got an agenda, that will come out at a later stage. But I'm not going to have press conferences responding to those. I'm only going to respond on the facts as we did today. What is our train? We've even put in your packs the measurements of these trains, okay? So that those of you who've got engineers in your team, or you can go to a consulting engineer, they can even give you that, so that we don't deal with anonymous engineers. We deal with people who've got face, who can tell us that this is what it is. So I want the facts to speak for themselves, and hopefully over time everyone would realize that, but these guys are not interested in the time. So the journalist, I'm asking you to go and ask, as part of your peer review, isn't it? Why was the statement from the rail safety regulator ignored that confirmed that we've actually done things correctly? That is a big question for me.
Okay.
Just my second question, sorry.
Okay.
Question, Nikki.
Okay.
That's all right. Just my second question, I didn't get a chance to ask it. You've asked us to guess at the motives behind this story. I'd like to know whether you think it's related to what's happening in the Prasa boardroom, and what's happening between the chairman, the transport minister, the boardroom, and yourself. If you're not being available, and now you're available, there's obvious tension. Is this a symptom, perhaps, of what has been happening structurally at the top level of this company?
Well, you know, Nikki, Prasa has been a very stable organization. And I think that, you know, last week at the EXCO meeting, the entire team, my entire executive team, recommitted themselves to work very hard and take our country forward. I work with the Minister of Transport. In fact, on my way here, when I was in the train this morning, I spoke to her. We had a lot of discussions about this matter. We had a lot of discussions about the thing. So I'm committed. Initially, of course, that I had my own reservations. And I don't think that we should allow the even conflict within, whether if there are problems within in the governance structures. My view is that we've got the minister, we've got the chairman, we should work together, solve those problems, fight if we've got battles to fight, let's fight those battles, but they shouldn't affect the work that we do. And I don't think that, Nikki, if, for example, there are differences between me and the chairman of Prasa, someone must go and write lies and say that this train cannot even go through a tunnel. I mean, what would I say? It's probably witchcraft, isn't it? It can't be scientific because the facts speak for themselves. This train is this size, it can go through a tunnel. Now you can't attribute it to the differences. I've made my views very clear. Of course, that ultimately is a decision of the board of Prasa and all of those things. But I've said at the end of my contract, which expires in March 31st, I said I'll make myself available. Doesn't mean I'll be the Group CEO of Prasa. It's a decision that, of course, the relevant structures will take, and they'll take into account where we are, what work we are doing, and all of those things. I just simply said I will make myself available around that. But I don't think this article, when I look at that, even if you are pursuing an agenda, get your facts straight, get your facts right, okay? You've got a duty, particularly if you say that you are dealing with these big numbers and everything. Get your facts right. And I don't think that the facts here support that. I'm convinced personally that there is an agenda. Everyone in the country, people have been sending me messages that we can see that there's a very consistent attack on Prasa. There's a consistent offensive on the person of the group CEO. We've seen all of that. Where it originates from, who's behind it, I think today we don't want to answer that question. Today we want to assure the country that we've got a train that is modern, that is versatile, and that will ensure that we change the travel experience of our own people. And that's what we want to assure South Africans about today.
I just posted a small clip of that on Twitter, and it's interesting the response that I've got. One question, but can these trains run on our lines? That's one of the questions.
But which line were you watching there?
The person just looked on this video. That's the question that they're posing, and they're also saying that all these tunnels have the same specification? Clearly, they're doubting.
Sure.
You know.
No. It's either black or white. You don't have any between. The thing must go through or it can't go through. It's as simple as that.
No, but I'm asking, which lines are we talking about? Because we said the train leaves from here to Cape Town. Are these not our lines? These are, when it leaves Park Station, it travels on a commuter line that is owned by Prasa. When it goes to the other side, it gets onto the line that is owned by Transnet. These are our lines. When we take it to Kimberley or to Mahikeng, it moves out of the Prasa line, it gets into the Transnet line. So these are our lines. That is not a movie. We are recording what is happening. So you see, I don't think we should deny. That's part of the problem. That there's the kind of denialism that we do something that we think is great for the country, and we're not saying we don't. We have our own faults. I've made a lot of dramatic decisions in this company. I'm criticized. Some of them, with hindsight, I look back and realize that I may have done things differently. So each one of us, we are not these people who've got all the answers and everything. But what I can assure you is that we've got a team of committed people. They're working very hard. They're trying to solve the problems that are there. And I think for me that's the most important thing. But let's assure, if you can post another one, that we're not talking about lines in Spain or in, these are South African, these trains are running there. You can ask people to say, vote. Those people who went to the North Sea Jazz Festival in Cape Town, they didn't travel on water like Jesus. They traveled on tracks that are South African tracks. So I mean, it's also so humorous that people are not even applying themselves correctly on this issue. The issue is that we've got a train that meets, we've got a locomotive that meets the specification, and that's the central point we want to emphasize.
Let me just raise one important point. You know, I interacted with a journalist yesterday, and in fact, it just shocked me that, in fact, he published this article with such level of ignorance on the technical details on the rail operations. First, he said to me, these trains are only running on the metro lines. They can't run on the Transnet lines. Now, there's no difference. The 3 kV network that Metro Rail runs its commuter services and the 3 kV network that we run long distance is the same. That is why we've got to jointly sign the safety instructions as part of the interface. So that's one. Secondly, he says he asked me to enlighten him about the specifications. Right? We were interacting on Twitter because he wrote the wrong specifications in the leading article. Now let me tell you what happened. This is you see, you've got the Euro 4000. Once they realize that Prasa has appointed Vosloo, people simply go on the internet, they look at the specification of the Euro 4000, but this is an adapted version. So I asked, why use the wrong specification in the first place? You see, because you can't be with such a leading article, you know, with the impact so huge, and then you get your facts so wrong. It's actually completely misleading, and I think it's a clear illustration that there is something behind this, because you fail to get the most basic facts right. I mean, how do you do that? So it is very clear, and I think at the end of I said, you rushed to publish this thing without the benefit of having interviewed our own engineers. You know, the excuse was that, well, they were simply not available. Even our spokesperson was not available. But that is a very lame excuse.
And we were in the same hall at Africa Rail with him. But you know what he was doing? He was trying to go to the stands at RSR there.
Yes, but Moffat, let's not do it. This is not a press conference about Peter Matter. It's about us telling the country about the Afro 4000. I don't want us to attack the journalist. Okay. He wrote this article. We respect that. We are correcting the facts here.
Okay, so I think we'll take with the last.
Which one is it? I can feel like.
Yeah, you can go.
We were passing from Cape Town.
Yeah.
Valeska from the Citizen newspaper. I'm not sure what kind of attempt the journalist made to contact you, or if you gave you ample enough time to respond. But just reading in his article, he says that he did contact Mr. Mokeng, and the response was that you are at liberty to write what you want. Could all of this not have been avoided if you did exactly what you're doing now, if you gave him the response exactly what you're doing now, and set the record straight then?
No. Let me explain. Peter sent me a set of questions. Okay.
In fact, can I respond to this? I don't want us to deal with Peter. Let's respect Peter. He's a journalist. Yeah. Okay. We've had our own experiences, of course, with the report, where we've been asked certain questions, we've answered, and our own responses were not. And I think that was the background to that kind of response. But I think the duty of care, in terms of the information, verifying all the facts, still resides with the journalist in respect of what you have. For example, the question that the answer that my colleague has just given. But again, let me emphasize. I've indicated we decided we will come to the press conference to debate with Peter. He's, I think, as a professional, we respect him. He must continue doing his work. Today, I'm here to tell the country that we've done everything correctly, and we've got a locomotive that will transport our people in safety, in comfort, and that it meets all the specifications, unlike what the article is saying. And secondly, to correct the fact that we've got the biggest blunder at all times. So I don't want to be placed, or any of our members to be placed, with due respect, in a position where they have to attack a journalist. That's not the relationship we want to build with the media as Prasa. We want to build a positive relationship. We want you to have a right to criticize us. I like that question from the back. You said there are no faults. Okay? Are you giving us the real thing? Because journalists must go behind the thing and ask the questions. We accept that. So Peter, next time, is going to want to write, and he's going to ask questions. Okay? And we've got to respond and respect. Rapport has got its own readers who want access to information, who must be, if they want to know about the train Hood bus, We must provide them with information on the crew train bus. So my view is that let's also not dramatize this and that because Peter has written all these things, we focus onto that. He will write articles, some would like, some would reject. Okay? If you consistently do certain things, we are unhappy, we'll point that out, but we move on. I don't think that we want to be trapped and deal with it. We've got a much bigger job. The rail system is under pressure. Every morning there's over 2,200 commuter trains we run across South Africa. Not one train, not 6 trains, 2,200 commuter trains we run in the country. They give us so much problems and difficulties. And I want the Prasa team to focus on that. Peter is free to come to Prasa. He's free to interview me. He's free to interview he's got the right to ask questions that we do not like as a journalist. And I want to assure you of that one. And I think wherever he is, I want to tell him that he's got the right to continue to ask those questions. But equally, I've got the right to continue to assure the country that the billions they're investing in the railway system will yield the results. I want us to show another one of these things to show that from the Malunga to show that the train is not in Europe. It's on our lines. I wanted to capture that. Maybe we should post it also on our website so that people can pick it up. Let's run it again. This is a beautiful locomotive of the people of South Africa. Look at the load there. Okay? Look at the load. Which station was it when we were passing?
Brackenfell.
Brackenfell in the Western Cape. It's not in Europe. It's not
Transnet network.
And this is a Transnet network, by the way, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. And it's passing through. There's no overhead structures that are falling apart.
Under the bridge.
And then it's passing under a bridge there. There's the Brackenfell. I think many of you know it, isn't it? We'll keep on showing more. And I think, Daniel, maybe we should post it on Facebook and on Twitter, people to see that these are the current network of South Africa. We are not somewhere all over the world.
I said Daniel must talk about the longest train we've ever run in the history of the country.
You want to add, Daniel?
Yeah, look, I think just to mention, I think what is important with the Afro, and this is where we're taking pride. We ran the longest passenger train in this country. It was 58, consist in total. Okay, and we combined metro rail coaches and long distance coaches. And this diesel has got two aspects. It can be, you can use it for air brake, you can also use it for vacuum brake. It was part of the test, what we call endurance test. So it was the longest in South Africa, in particular for the passenger service. 58 consist with, again, 2 dead locomotives, which were not doing anything. They were just a dead load. So again, we pass through Prasa's network, we transverse into the Transnet network.
I think Dr. Mtimpuru has explained the agility, the dynamism, and the resilience of this train. I think on that note, I am going to close. If there is any more stuff that we need to talk about, I know Freddie wants a session with me on the site, and so I think we'll do that, Freddie, after this. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Thanks for coming, guys. Thank you.
Great work. How are you, sir? It's Mose. Okay, let me give you my business card. That's okay. Thank you.